Whether you're a founder just starting out, a seasoned business owner looking to expand, or simply interested in learning about the world of business, this podcast is for you. My name is Mario Schäfer, CEO at OneIB. In each episode, we will explore topics related to the creation, growth, and globalization of businesses, from ideation and funding to marketing and operations. Our guests will share their insights, experiences, and lessons learned along the way. Join us as we dive into the world of entrepreneurship and business on this podcast. Please follow us on YouTube. We're here today with Matt Grady. Welcome. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hey, Mario. Thanks so much for having me here. So I'm based in the UK. And for the first part of my career, I was a professional golfer and traveled most of the Europe and Middle East in my career as a professional golfer. Before I started a family, I started to consider opportunities outside of playing golf. And I was given the opportunity to move into the recruitment industry in various sectors. And for the last 12 years, that's where I stayed. And throughout my recruitment career, progressed into executive search over the last 5 years, working with a number of various sectors, most notably the semiconductor industry, microelectronics. And then I bridged into medical device and healthcare organizations internationally.
Could you explain the key role that international recruitment plays in driving business growth on a global scale? And what are some of the primary benefits it offers to businesses expanding internationally?
Yeah, absolutely, Mario. And I didn't mention it at the end of my last sentence, but I've just recently moved this year into another organization where we are helping other organizations and individuals move internationally. And Morel with Dynamic Futures helps support international recruitment really at its core. So really, I think the value of being able to offer an international recruitment solution is really critical now for organizations. A lot of the time, I specifically in my own career found that certain skill sets in local organizations were very limited. And if a company was to take the stance that we only recruit within our country, they were extremely limited on the level of and depth of quality of the people that they were looking to attract. Fortunately, a number of the organizations that I used to work with took a global perspective and really looked globally for their talent. It was really those companies that I saw excel, where they had that open mind to recruit remotely or recruit in different entities for their company in order to get the best people. And what I generally found that those companies, their mindset, and certainly it was a shared mindset that I had with them, is let's hire the best people for the job, not just any person for the job. So when expanding internationally, I think it's absolutely critical, Mario, that organizations and individuals who are in those positions to recruit take a global perspective to hiring. And to use an example, it would be maybe back in the 80s and 90s when IT skills were predominantly found in India, for example. Or today you might say, well, look at the semiconductor industry. Where is the talent? You could arguably say that it's either on the west coast of the US or it's for manufacturing, it's in Taiwan. When you hear that, you really have to think, let's go to where the talent is, not necessarily worry about finding the bottom of the market within your local area. I hope that answers the question, Mario.
Thank you, Matt. So in your experience, what are the major challenges and also, of course, the opportunities that businesses encounter when they decide to recruit talent from different countries and cultures? And how can they navigate these effectively?
Yeah, sure. So a few parts there. So the major challenges really are, what I found in my experience really, are time zones, ironically. If you're based in the UK, for example, or Germany, but you really need to find people on the west coast of America, a major challenge might actually just be operating in the same time zone. That is something that is very typical. And one of the other major challenges as well when recruiting internationally or looking at recruiting talent from different countries and cultures is that living expenses are very different. What I found generally is that salaries would go lower the further from the west of the world to the east of the world that we went. So when we were looking at attracting candidates in the US, one of the major challenges were was that their salary expectations were far greater than those in Europe. And some of the reasons there, which you'll know of, include the cost of healthcare in the US. That's significantly higher than what we experience in the UK, where we have the NHS, which is a free service for all. And then that varies across the globe as well. So that is a major challenge, really, to be able to accommodate internationals on their own turf, really. Obviously, if you're moving internationals into your own country, you'll only face the costs of what you're familiar with, but really understanding what are the different nuances in different countries and cultures. Now, also something that I noticed along my travels was the US is a very work hard, play hard culture. They work extremely long hours. And actually in Europe, let's say the UK, and I've had some experience of France as well, is that we're a little bit more, I would say, wary of our work-life balance, and we are more conscious of the time that we spend outside of work as well, in that we would not be working the same sort of hours that an American would work, for example. And I guess that moves on to how companies can navigate these effectively, is really having potentially expertise within the country or building partnerships outside of the country or the countries that you're recruiting for to really understand the different cultures and how can we accommodate different working styles as well. Now, probably thinking about working styles, that might lead into discussing remote work with you as well. But I say some of the key challenges, geographies, time zones, reward and benefit, and working culture, I think are some things to be aware of. And I think having an awareness is probably the first place to start when looking at navigating the challenges effectively.
Could you share some case studies where international recruitment has significantly contributed to a company's expansion and success? And of course, what lessons can other businesses learn from these examples?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a number of cases really over the years where I've seen successful organizations adopt an international recruitment strategy in order to optimize business operations. Actually, one of the industries that I saw was maybe had a reputation of being very hard tech, was actually one of the most innovative, and that was in the semiconductor industry. And I had a particular client in North America whose business or the group business was based in Japan, but they knew that to optimize business operations, they needed to have a base and a location in Singapore. Now, actually, the talent in Singapore for this particular type of positions that they were hiring was fairly low, but they knew that Singapore was a key strategic hub for the operations in the Far East. So what they did was part of their recruitment strategy was build in not only a local sort of Singaporean recruitment strategy, but a US and a European strategy that would build in the right sort of package for an individual and their family to move seamlessly to Singapore and build a life that was not too dissimilar to the life that they were living in their own country. So making sure that the benefits, the rewards, the relocation package, the settlement, the sponsorship, the support for their family in terms of schooling as well for children. So this particular company had really put a lot of detailed thought into what needs to happen when an individual and their family, if they had one, moving to a country that they've never lived in before. What do they need to be successful in this new role? So really took the time to take all of the detail and administrative detail and the costs involved in them moving to Singapore. And in the end, actually, they hired somebody through our services in the US, and they started in the US and onboarded in the US and gradually relocated over to Singapore once they were accustomed to the company style and the objectives. And this was quite a senior position. It was a VP in a technology organization. So it was a big role. It played quite a significant part of their expansion. So it's really great that we saw the hire was made and offered and accepted in the US. They embedded into the business and onboarded, and took about 3 to 6 months to move slowly out to Singapore. But that was just one successful case study where an organization with a head office in Japan, with regional offices to expand Europe for the right reasons, looked globally at talents, but hired essentially the right person for the role, the best person for the role, and made it possible and easy for that person to relocate. And I think that the last question there, what lessons can other businesses learn from these examples, moves back to the initial question as well on taking a global and international approach to recruitment, and not just taking the perspective of we're just going to hire a warm body to put on a seat. We really want somebody who's going to be long-term and a long-term sustainable relationship in employment.
International recruitment often involves complex processes, from visa and immigration issues to cultural immigration, as you just mentioned in your example. How do organizations ensure a seamless experience for both the recruited talent and the existing workforce when expanding globally?
This is something that I've become very close to over the last month now since moving to Dynamic Futures. And I've started to see really the complexities in the process. And that's not just complexities in moving parts, but also in local and international labor laws. And you mentioned then your question about visa and immigration issues as well. This is a big thing, really, the classification of workforce, the relationships, the contracts, the employment contracts. I mean, there's so many items there to discuss in the visa and immigration process before we even go into the cultural integration. Now, fortunately, through a lot of the visa and immigration services, that there are certain tests to ensure. I know in the UK, for example, that there is an English test, and that's a language test as well, really important to make sure that the individual moving can speak the language of the country they're moving to. I'm not exactly sure of all the cultural integration processes in other countries, but I know it can be very complex for the individual and the employing company if they don't take the right steps in advance. Our company does that now in partnership with the client and the individual to make sure it's seamless. But if they're doing it themselves, there are many things that they need to do. And the question that you asked there, secondly, about how do organizations ensure the seamless experience, it's really, I think, going back to something I said earlier, is having an awareness that there is a process and it may be complex. And actually, if you get it wrong, it can be very expensive, both financially, time, due to the administrational, but also legally. You really don't want to be getting in any hot water through employment law, contractual obligations as well, and liabilities for bringing somebody into or moving into a new country. So there's a number of things that organizations can do. They can speak to a company like ourselves who help organizations and individuals move internationally through sponsorship, immigration, and consultancy to make sure that they're legally and compliantly working correctly in the country that they're moving to. So really, I think an awareness, to summarize, an awareness that not every company can do everything. And I think quite entrepreneurial companies often think that they can do everything themselves, but actually the better entrepreneurial companies are the ones who have the awareness that they might have to collaborate and partner with consultants and consultancies such as yourself, Mario, in order to enable a seamless experience for both the new talent and existing workforce if they are expanding globally. So I think in summary again, or in second summary, the awareness that you might not have all the knowledge yourself and you need to look outside and partner and collaborate with other consultants who can help you do what you need to do.
With the world becoming increasingly interconnected, what trends do you see shaping the future of international recruitment? And how should businesses adapt to these trends to remain competitive and foster continued growth?
Yeah, I really love this question because it makes me think about what I'm thinking about on a daily basis. It's how can we help the companies and individuals that we're working with become more competitive? How can we help them get the competitive edge? And a couple of things that I've said throughout this podcast have brilliant questions, I've got to say, Marion, really thought-provoking. is going where the skills are and being open to looking outside of your traditional sphere of influence or the people that you know. I think a lot of organizations think that they have the network, and because they have a big following or a huge HR and talent team, that they know everybody out there. But really, it's an extremely big world. And the trends that I'm seeing are the organizations are becoming very aware of where the talent is. Other trends include really topical trends on what skills are needed in the workplace, such as AI, machine learning, and so on. There's an emergence of new skills that haven't really been adopted in certain countries yet. You probably remember a few years ago that digitization was quite a big thing, and digital transformation of organizations was huge. And it made me think, well, if you're only doing it now, why weren't you doing it 5 years ago when it was really important too? And I think a lot of the time it was because the organizations did not have the people or weren't able to recruit locally or regionally the people that they needed in order to continue to be competitive and grow. So the world absolutely is becoming more interconnected. And the trends I'm seeing as well are specifically around remote working. I work for a London-based business. I'm 200 miles away from my London office, and I go and visit once or twice a month, go on the train there. I think organizations need to continue to adapt to the people that they need. And if it's reasonable, should absolutely adopt these workplace trends such as remote, hybrid, or fully office-based, whatever it might be. But I think organizations should, and probably will, in the most part, continue to look forward at the skills they require, and with the right thought, identify where these people are going to come from. You know, where are the talent hotbeds? So whenever I think of automotive, Mario, I think immediately of Germany, and maybe that's because I drive an Audi, but there are certain countries where I think that is a country that adopts this technology or this sector and has been an early adopter and will most likely have the best people in the industry.
To close, tough one. How would you describe a successful hire in 3 words?
Amazing. Now, as you can imagine, I had to put a lot of thought into this. It certainly sharpens the focus when you need to bring things into 3 words. And without sounding too cheesy, the 3 words that I came up were win, win, win. A successful hire for me was a hire where the client or the hiring manager got the best person they could possibly have for the role. The candidate got the best role, the most suitable role for them, and they were the right candidate to get the job. And the client and the client's businesses have secured a brilliant partnership where they can continue to thrive and grow and expand and capture market. So the client gets the best person, the candidate gets the role they are made for. And as a result, the organization's clients get the best possible service. And I think there's some other things happen there as well, in that generally when the right company gets the right person, the clients are hugely successful, the business continues to thrive and is more profitable. There's so many other events that happen when you make a great hire. And I think one of the biggest challenges that organizations have faced over the years is retaining the best people. I think retention rates now, I think especially this generation, are moving a lot quicker. I think gone are the days where people are staying in companies for 30, 40 years and then retiring. So if they can get it right, if they can get the talent equation right, it's a win-win-win for a successful hire.
Thank you for being with us today, Matt.
An absolute pleasure, Mario. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed the questions.